I don't know if they're investigating botting or what. I don't know what they're investigating. How Drake telling y'all other niggas bot? Y'all trying to get at Drake because y'all think he bot? Come on, man.
I want to perform their favorite song, but you know they love the suit.
What song? Yeah, that song.
Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, you thought it'd be the winner of the battle that'd be broken by the beef like a cattle? Straddle your saddle cause you're in for a bumpy ride. The tides turned in the Toronto tough talking Taylor Swift twin who lost the beef and thought the bots would help him win the court of public opinion. These delusions of Lucian will have the goofy kid from Compton with a spooky grin, because it is now Labriana, or should I say Botliana, whose face is front and center of a case against Spotify, where they claim they quantify Drake's homicide on the charts as modified by the bots and not fans truly consuming the arts. So let's break this mess down, come along for the ride, but first press your index down on the like and subscribe.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
So, Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, as many of you guys know, Drake unleashed mayhem upon the industry when he sued UMG over promoting and publishing Not Like Us. One of the key 3 factors within Drake's lawsuit was that UMG used illegal business practices to deceive music listeners into thinking that the song was way more popular than it was. How did UMG do that? Well, through payola, paying DJs under the table to spin the song on radio, through paying social media influencers to discuss the song, react to it, and review it positively, and of course, the major accusation that drew in the most amount of headlines, as Drake was the first artist of that type of magnitude to peel the curtain back on this deceptive practice, which many people have known about, but no one spoke up to it on this level. The botting allegations, the fake streams.
I study
fake streams
for a living.
Drake accused Kendrick Lamar and UMG of using fake streams to make the numbers of Not Like Us go crazy on Spotify and make the public think Kendrick had not only won the battle of better diss songs, but also of more popular records. The irony is that every record that Not Like Us broke on Spotify's streaming platform, like being, the fastest song to hit 300 million streams, the song to have the most amount of streams in a single day, all those records that Not Like Us broke, the person who held the record before was Drake with God's Plan.
Huh?
So Drake suing UMG over the numbers of Not Like Us being astronomical on Spotify is kind of ironic, because the artist who had these astronomical numbers before Kendrick, who Kendrick knocked off, was Drake himself. So much so to the point that during his commercial peak, when God's Plan was smashing all these records on Spotify, during the release of his 2018 album Scorpion, Spotify had actually plastered Botliana's face all across their app on every single playlist. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. Look at this picture. And then look at this one. I mean, come on, guys. This is 2018. Drake is on the Fresh Gospel playlist, the Cookout playlist, the Ambient Chill playlist. In the first picture I showed you guys, he was on the Best of British playlist. Is Drake a British artist? No, he's not. But because he was on that playlist and many others, his album that they were plugging at the time on all these playlists, Scorpion, had broke the streaming record on both Apple Music and Spotify with more than 302 million plays in one single day. But many users complained that Spotify put his photo on all of these playlists, and subscribers who had paid for the premium version of Spotify, which are supposed to be accounts that are advertising free of advertisements, they said putting Drake on all these ridiculous playlists actually was the equivalent to advertising. This wasn't natural playlisting. It's not natural recommendations when Drake is plastered on gospel playlists, right? So what did they do? They demanded refunds from Spotify. And Spotify seemingly agreed that this was ridiculous, because one subscriber had even said he had been offered a 1-month free Spotify subscription as a result of his complaint. Now, why do I bring this up? Because if there was one artist in the industry that was privy to enough behind-the-scenes manipulation tactics on these streaming platforms to know that he could file a lawsuit against a major record label that he was also signed to and accuse them of using bots, it was Drake. But the problem is, he didn't know enough about the bots. When Drake initially filed his lawsuit against UMG, the only major source that he had in the paperwork was a live stream that Snack a Diddler had done with this anonymous user who would claim that he had been paid by Anthony Saleh, one of Kendrick's team members, for the guy to basically put 30 million streams on Not Like Us in its first week of release. Keep in mind, even if that was true, 30 million fake streams is nothing compared to the actual billions of streams that Not Like Us got, but this claim wasn't true. The guy on Akademiks' stream showed a screenshot of an LLC that he said he got a money transfer to in order to put the fake streams, and it was called Anthony Soleil LLC. When you look it up, that LLC, that company, doesn't even exist.
Early on, when the song first dropped, it wasn't him. I'm not going to say he reached out to me himself, because obviously he didn't. It was definitely somebody from management. They wanted me to do 30 million early, which fed into the rest of the views, because obviously it was going to be a hit song either way. I like the song. You want me to be honest? The song is good.
Could we also divulge names? Who reached out to you on behalf of Kendrick?
I have payment proof, and I will DM that to you, as long as you know you won't expose it right now on stream in front of everybody, but I will send you all the proof, all the receipts and everything. Fuck it, bro. It's Anthony Soleil. I'm crashing out because, like, this is for my safety. This is how I feel. That's who paid me. Not saying I was in direct contact with him. That's just the name that was on the account that I got paid by.
And this source was so baseless that when Drake actually filed an amended complaint, like he corrected up his lawsuit and resent it into the judge, he removed that source from his paperwork. And ultimately, when the judge threw out Drake's lawsuit, she had said that his complaint about UMG using deceptive business practices on Not Like Us was all built off speculation. It didn't name specific influencers or provide evidence of fake streams or show proof of any misleading campaign. So even if UMG had promoted the song heavily, that's normal marketing. It's not fraud. So for that reason, the case was dismissed in full. But even with Drake's lack of evidence in the UMG case, this didn't stop his greatest glazers from saying that Drake was about to revolutionize the music industry by pressing a big red button that would expose not just Kendrick, but all artists for using bots and record labels manipulating the entire business for their little puppets. You had Rory from the Rory and Mal podcast saying things like a Radio Rico was about to come into play.
Michael Jackson tried to do this and they stopped him. Let's go for it, man. Like, what's so crazy with me, with the internet, for the last 7 years, y'all have been justifying snitching with real street. But when it comes to labels this week, snitching is against the rules now.
And Drake himself, when attempting to justify his lawsuit, he said he filed it to make the UMG offices a safer space for artists in the future. And it looks like that really might happen, but not through Drake's lawsuit, of course. Why I bring up Drake's lawsuit is because for the past year, ever since he filed it, the music industry has been up in arms about all these botting allegations. The scope of the barrel was on Kendrick Lamar and UMG, but now that Drake's lawsuit just got dismissed, it looks like that scope has now shifted onto Drake. We saw Drake entangled in a lawsuit just last week against Stake and Drake's shady practices with them, and now Drake is roped into, but not sued. It's important to note he's not getting sued. He is just the face of a brand new lawsuit against Spotify, where they're accusing the platform of botting artists. Now we're going to break down this lawsuit, we're going to break down where Drake is involved in it, and understand what this means for the music industry and how this new lawsuit really is in an attempt to make the music industry a safer space for artists in the future. But first, I think it's important to understand what are bots and why would Spotify or certain record labels be incentivized to even use bots in the first place? These are fake streams. It would make no sense for me to put fake views on my video, but why would it make sense for an artist to put fake streams on their songs? Let's unpack it. So firstly, what are bots? Bots are essentially computer programs or fake Spotify accounts that automatically play songs on repeat. So instead of a real person pressing play, a bot can stream a song 1,000 times, thousands of times, day and night without stopping. Remember back in 2018, J. Cole rapped, "How many faking their streams getting their plays from machines?" There are literal farms, they're called streaming farms, where a bunch of phones or devices are plugged up in one room, all repeatedly playing the same song over and over again. Artists or companies will pay to use bots to basically just inflate the streaming numbers, making it look like a song is way more popular than it actually is. But artists don't just use bots to make their songs look more popular. In certain cases, the bots can actually help the song become more popular. As you guys probably know, a large portion of listeners mainly hear their music through Spotify's playlists. And Spotify ranks their playlists on different levels, right? At the high end, you have the big dog playlists, the biggest playlists like the Rap Caviars or the global top hits today. Then in the middle, you have a bunch of other random playlists. And then at the low end, you have brand new playlists that don't have a lot of traction that can be created by different users on the platform or Spotify themselves. Now, the way songs actually get more streams is by being on the bigger playlists, right? Well, how do you get on those bigger playlists? Typically, it's through a ranking system. If you're a random underground artist, you might start off on one of the very small playlists, right? The level 3, the bottom playlists. If your song is continuously getting played, saved by different users, and people are engaging with it on those smaller playlists, it'll get boosted up to level 2, the bigger playlists. And the cycle continues. If it continues getting a lot of streams on those level 2 playlists, it'll get boosted up to level 1, the higher tier playlists, the Rap Caviars. Those are the playlists that millions, dozens of millions of people are listening to and have saved. So if your song is on one of those playlists, you have a lot more eyeballs on them. Now, if you're signed to a major label and you have a big budget, odds are you can skip these steps and the major label will just get your song on the biggest playlist right off the rip. That's where you'll see the Drakes, the Kendricks, NBA Youngboy when they release new songs, etc. Now back to the bots.
I study
Bots.
for a living.
If you're on one of those lower level playlists, but you get your music botted to high hell, tons of bots on your music, then you're tricking the algorithm into thinking that people are really messing with your music. And your song, therefore, will move up on these different levels of playlists until you start getting on the biggest ones. That's another incentive for artists to use bots. It tricks Spotify into thinking that people are messing with your song more than they actually are. And it's not just playlists. Spotify's algorithm also recommends new songs to different users, right? And if your song is getting interacted with a lot, even if it's through fake streams, through bots, you're essentially tricking Spotify's algorithm into thinking, okay, people are liking this song, let's recommend it to new users. And this isn't even the biggest problem. This is where the problem lies if artists like Drake, who dominate a large portion of the actual total music consumption in the world, are really using bots. Because Spotify technically doesn't pay you for each stream that you get. How Spotify's pay system works is they essentially use a pro rata model that pools all the ad and subscription revenue for the month. They keep 30% and they distribute the remaining 70% to artists based on their total share of streams. So basically, let's say there's 100 billion streams on Spotify for the month and Drake got 1 billion streams that month. He has 1% of the total share of streams on Spotify for that month. So they'll be paying Drake out 1% of all the revenue that the company has received, whether it's through ads, whether it's through subscriptions from their users, etc. But when you add bots into the equation, this is where things get tricky. You're basically stealing market share from other artists, right? If, again, let's say Spotify had 100 billion streams on the platform in total this month, and I only really had 300 million streams, but I had 700 million fake streams, botted streams on my account, then technically I just went from 0.03 market share to 1% market share, meaning that Spotify now has to pay me 1% of all the money that the company earned that month. I'm diluting the other artists. Let's think about it like cake, because I like cake.
I study
Cake.
for a living.
Let's say I own a bakery and I have like all these different bakers. You guys are all the bakers baking me different pieces of cake. Let's say each piece of cake is sold for $3. Let's say there's 10 bakers, so there's 10 slices of cake. The total pool of money that the bakery generated that day is $30. But let's say Drake comes in and he fudges the numbers and he writes on my sheet of total sales and X's out that he only sold one cake and says that he really sold 2 pieces of cake. Well, now that $30 gets divided by 11 pieces of cake, not 10. So each of you guys who sold one slice for $3 no longer get $3 because now my numbers don't say you generated 1/10 of the total profits we earned that day. It says instead you generated 1/11 of the total profits. Meanwhile, Drake walks away with most of the profits. So do you see why, based off the way that Spotify pays artists, it can get tricky when certain artists start using these manipulation tactics like bots? And this sucks for lesser known artists because A, they probably don't have the budget to start using bots like the big dogs do, and B, you also have to factor in that the label first takes their cut that Spotify pays out, and then they pay the artist. So your share is already getting diluted, and then the label comes in and takes a huge portion of your share. Not to mention the fact that independent artists actually earn less per stream from Spotify than artists signed to a major label. So when Drake said he's making the music industry a safer space for artists in the future, he's not lying in terms of something needs to change for how these artists are treated. But the question is, was that really his intention from the beginning?
But you know they love to sue.
Now, before we take a look at this lawsuit where Drake is the poster boy for insane botting activity on Spotify, I want to bring your attention to a couple suspicious things that have gone on over the last few months. The first thing being some very strange charting activity of Drake's song Doghouse that he released on his Iceman episode 3. He should name the song Dog Crap because that's what it was, and it fell off the charts pretty quickly, but not before it had a very suspicious couple of days where it kept going up and down in numbers at these rapid, volatile rates that you don't usually see a song grow naturally at. I pointed this out to you guys 2 months ago in September in a video I did back then, so I want to bring you guys the clip before we dissect this lawsuit because, of course, with Drake accusing Kendrick and UMG of strange streaming activity, bot farms on Not Like Us, this Doghouse record, Dog Crap, I should say, had the strangest streaming activity I have personally ever seen on the charts. If you want to take a look at what botting looks like, I'm not saying he necessarily factually did use bots on this Yeet song, but it has some very suspicious charting activity. So the song is released on September 9th, 2025. It cracks the US Spotify charts, and pay attention to these numbers, all right? So September 9th, it comes in around 70 on the charts with around 400,000 streams. It doesn't make the global Spotify charts, meaning it didn't have enough streams to make like the main Spotify chart that has all the most streamed songs globally. But then 3 days later, the song randomly premieres on the global Spotify charts with 2.2 million streams. Remember how I told you the song came out 3 days before this, right? And it was getting around 400,000 streams on the US charts, meaning like in the US, it was streamed 400,000 times on the first day of its release on September 9th. Suddenly, on September 12th, it's getting 2.3 million streams globally, the first day that it actually enters that chart. And on the US chart, it bumps up 46 spots to the 13th position with 900,000 streams that day. That's a 500,000 plus increase from its first day on the charts when it had around 400,000. That's very suspicious off the rip because usually a song in its first day will get the most amount of streams and then it slowly starts trickling down. But hey, maybe people didn't know about this song. It was just randomly premiered. Maybe it took a couple days to gain some traction, right? We'll give Drake the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what it does the next day, because surely if it's gaining that momentum and all of a sudden it just makes its random debut 3 days after its release onto the charts, then surely it's going to start to rise or at least stay around the same numbers, right? Well, keep in mind again, September 12th, it comes on randomly onto the global Spotify charts for its first day, 3 days after it was actually released, with 2.3 million streams at number 43 on the charts. The next day, take a look at how far it dropped. It dropped 107 spots and only got 1.3 million streams. That's 1 million streams less than it had the day before. And the day before, it was already 3 days after its release. A song never just randomly gets a crap ton of streams on a random day and then suddenly drops 1 million streams in the following day. Are you following what I'm saying here? The drop is astronomical. It makes no sense. The next day, it completely falls off the charts. It's no longer on there. And the lowest song on the charts is Addison Rae's Diet Pepsi with around 1 million streams. That means that this Drake song had less than 1 million streams. So follow the numbers, right? The first 3 days of its release, this new song, it's not on the charts at all. One day, 3 days after its release, randomly, it pops up with 2.3 million streams. The next day, it falls over 100 spots on the charts and loses 1 million streams. And then the day after that, it falls off the charts completely and has 400,000 less streams than it did the day before. Do you see how suspicious this is? This is almost like his team plugged in a bunch of bots onto this song to see if it would, start gaining the traction if some more eyeballs were on it. But those bots didn't work, and so the song started organically falling off the charts at a rapid rate and losing an insane amount of streams. probably because on the first day, those streams were not organic to begin with. Say what you want about Kendrick Lamar using bots, but we've never seen one of Kendrick's songs have a massive streaming day and then all of a sudden the next day it falls 100 positions and then just falls off the charts completely. What the hell is going on here? So right off the rip when I saw this, I immediately thought Drake is suing Kendrick Lamar for botting activity, with no actual sources in his lawsuit proving Kendrick did so. And I reviewed the entire lawsuit with you guys earlier in this video because I want to ask you this final question. Why would Drake be so confident to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on lawyers? Literally, he said to the judge that he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars tracking down people of Kendrick's team to serve them subpoenas to get information for this case. He had no evidence. Why would he be so confident to actually file this lawsuit, go through with it to the lengths that he did, and even when it got dismissed, file a notice to appeal to keep the case going? And the only conclusion I could come to is that Drake knows about these manipulative industry botting tactics because he's either used them in the past or seen them be used in the past.
Spicy.
And that's why even with no evidence against Kendrick Lamar or UMG, he was still confident to go through with this lawsuit. Now, what's also suspicious, and we reviewed this in a couple other previous videos of mine, essentially DJ Snackadiddler and one of his little minions who runs one of his Twitter pages had their houses surrounded by private investigators who were looking to gather data not specifically on Akademiks or his minion, but actually on their connection with Drake and what they know about Drake and his affiliation with Stake, and what they know about Drake using bots. This private investigator, who Akademiks says is a cybersecurity analyst or something along the lines, claims that she knows for sure that Drake used bots. This was just a week or two ago, and we're all so confused. Who could this private investigator be? Why are they surrounding Akademiks? How do they know about Drake using bots? What are they trying to look into with Drake? And just a week later, what do you know? 2 lawsuits filed where Drake is at the face of them. One about Stake and Drake's affiliation with them, and of course this other one now with Spotify where they're saying Drake used bots on his music and Spotify let it slide. So while Akademiks was trying to blame Roc Nation for hiring this private investigator to talk about Drake using bots and gather evidence from Akademiks, it seems like this was probably someone hired by the legal team of whoever filed this lawsuit that's now accusing Drake of using bots on his music.
Sat outside, somehow got phone numbers, texted saying, hey, we're not leaving outside until we see you. We want to speak to you. By the way, also, I need to know what Roc Nation got with Drake. What they got going on?
This is not the Akademiks RICO. This is not the Akademiks takedown. This is an attempted takedown at Drake. They're trying to dig up information from Akademiks' team on what they know behind Drake, but they've been digging, they've been grilling, all right?
This is the Akademiks media empire RICO, except it's bigger than that. No, this is the Drake RICO, because I've listened to this before. They don't want me, they want Drake. Listen to this.
So Akademiks plays the phone call between the private investigator and Grand Wizard, and basically Grand Wizard, he's a guy in Australia. You can look him up. His picture's been exposed. Akademiks is already jumping ship. He's already acting like he doesn't know who this guy is. He wants nothing to do with him. He's completely disassociating with this guy.
Who's the wizard then? I'm obviously the wizard here.
To be fair, I don't know who Grand Wizard is. I want to put that on the record. It's my boy, but he might be AI.
So this is where it gets crazy, guys, and you guys are going to love this, all right? So the private investigator who's questioning this Grand Wizard guy, all right, she says that she knows for 100% certain that Drake bots his music, and she wants to know what Grand Wizard knows about that. Because remember, again, Akademiks had that guy on the stream who was claiming that he was botting music for Kendrick Lamar. TDE was asking Akademiks if Drake is actually the one paying them for all the nasty promotion they do on their Twitter pages, right? We know that when Grand Wizard's account, his Instagram account, got hacked, Drake was the one who had the connects to get it back. And now this private investigator is turning on the Grand Wizard guy to say, I want to know what you know about Drake using bots, because I know 100% for certain Drake is out here botting his music, all right? Deploying the K-bots onto his mediocre trash. And they're looking for info, right? They're looking to see, because obviously at this point, these Akademiks guys, all these little minions, they have become infiltrated in Drake's operation. And this investigator is looking into whatever they have on Drake for whatever reason. But she says 100% they know, based off the investigations they've done, that Drake has used bots. After all the Kendrick accusations he's made, they're claiming that Drake 100% himself uses bots on his music.
So you're accusing... So Drake bots his music. That's what you're trying to say. Allegedly.
I'm 100% sure he does.
You're 100% sure.
Yo, Rock Nation, what y'all got going on, man? Rock Nation, Meg Thee Stallion. How Drake telling y'all other niggas bot? Y'all trying to get at Drake because y'all think he bot? Come on, man.
Akademiks has said that he's done his research on this investigator. She is in fact real and was actually some sort of cyber security investigator, right? So obviously that deals in digital manipulation, right? Fake streams could fall under that category, which is what she's saying she knows 100% for certain Drake uses. Akademiks is confused. Is this some sort of botting investigation? Is that what you're trying to find? Are you trying to find out, if we're the one deploying these illegal fake streams onto Drake's music? Grand Wizard goes on to ask her, why would the biggest artist in the world need fake streams? Well, hey, how do you think he became the biggest artist in the world? The bots, all right, the bots. The investigator also goes on to ask about Stake, which Drake has a partnership in, right? If you guys didn't know, that's the gambling company that Drake has been doing a bunch of live streams where he gambles on, promotes it to the youth. Very disgusting thing to be promoting to everybody, but yeah, that's what Drake promotes, all right, to get the check. Anything for the bag, right? So Drake has been doing that. He's been allegedly using the bots, according to this investigator. She's trying to figure out what Akademiks and his little minion know about that.
So why are you certain? The evidence shows that. But why does the biggest artist in the world need to bot his music if he's the biggest artist in the world?
Let's talk about Stake.
You said what?
Let's talk about Stake.
I know the investigator's name. I looked up their credentials. Again, I don't want to dox them because I don't want none of y'all harassing them. Apparently, they worked in cyber frauds, money laundering frauds, all type of fraud. I don't know if they're investigating botnet or what. I don't know what they're investigating.
And this investigator makes it very clear that she believes there is a connection between Drake and this Grand Wizard guy and Akademiks, right? That they're all in cahoots with one another, deploying some very sketchy things, to say the least. And based off her line of questioning, it's in relation to Stake, it's in relation to the bots, which she says she knows 100% for certain Drake has been using.
How my name get up in the mix, shorty?
No, I'm asking if they pay you to do the work that you do.
What work do I do?
On behalf of Akademiks, on behalf of Drake, do they pay you to do the work that you do?
At some point, we gotta say, like, this whole, like, Meg Thee Stallion, Rock Nation, like, they're losing it.
So the Grand Wizard goes on to say that these are all Kendrick Lamar allegations, right? The whole botting allegations that this woman is making, it's related to Kendrick Lamar, right? Because, of course, Drake was accusing Kendrick of using the bots, so now she's trying to flip it to say, no, Drake is the one using the bots. She's emphasizing she knows nothing about Kendrick Lamar. She is a hired investigator, a cyber investigator. It's her job to know that Drake is using bots.
Because this is a very harsh allegation. This is a man's craft here you're talking about. He's perfected his craft over his tenure of his huge music career, and you're trying to diminish it with some Kendrick Lamar allegations?
I don't know any Kendrick Lamar allegations. What I know is data. I'm an investigator, so I know data.
Yeah, I know.
So with these private investigators outside Akademiks' house scoping what he knows about Drake using bots and all the strange charting activity that I was talking to you guys about all the way 2 months ago in September, we now have an actual class action lawsuit filed against Spotify that claims that not millions, but billions of Drake streams were fraudulent. So let's go through this doozer, alright? A new class action lawsuit accuses Spotify of turning a blind eye to mass-scale fraudulent streaming. And that one musician in particular has been the beneficiary of billions of fake streams, Drake. The lawsuit was filed in California District Court on Sunday night with rapper and cousin of Snoop Dogg, RBX, who's named as the lead plaintiff. While the most eye-popping allegations in the lawsuit relate to Drake's streaming numbers, there are no specific accusations of wrongdoing against the Nokia rapper. Only Spotify is named as the defendant. So, aka, Drake is not the one getting sued. They're just using Drake as an example of Spotify turning a blind eye to massive artists who used bots on their music. They keep going. Every month, under Spotify's watchful eye, billions of fraudulent streams are generated from fake, illegitimate, or illegal methods, like bots. Such mass-scale streaming fraud causes massive financial harm to legitimate artists, songwriters, producers, and other rightful shareholders. Streaming royalties are paid out through a stream share model, where subscription and ad dollars are put into a giant pool, with the money divvied up based on each artist's share of the total streams. Most of that money already flows upstream to the most successful artists and biggest rights holders. In this type of shared pool model, fake streams hurt other artists whose shares aren't inflated. And yeah, we looked at that before, right? Like the whole example with the cake that I gave you guys earlier in this video. So a Spotify spokesperson actually issued a statement on this lawsuit saying, "We can't comment on pending litigation. However, Spotify in no way benefits from the industry-wide challenge of artificial streaming. We heavily invest in always improving best-in-class systems to combat it and safeguard artist payouts with strong protection like removing fake streams, withholding royalties, and charging penalties. Our systems are working. In a case from last year, one bad actor was indicted for stealing $10 million from streaming services and only $60,000 of which came from Spotify, proving how effective we are at limiting the impact of artificial streaming on our platform." And we did see Spotify take some initiatives over the last few months. That was also why everyone thought, Spotify, the whole industry was scared of Drake's lawsuit, because Spotify over the last few months has been actually removing streams from different artists when those streams were fake or botted. Many people tried to say that it would be Kendrick Lamar or Doechii who had streams removed, but their streams remained intact. Just to let you guys know where they stand on the whole botting thing, right? Now, while the lawsuit suggests that the use of bots is widespread on Spotify, the only example that the lawsuit cites pertains to Drake.
I study
Bots.
for a living.
It claims voluminous, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, voluminous information which Spotify knows or should know that proves a substantial, non-trivial percentage of Drake's 37 billion streams were inauthentic and appeared to be the work of a sprawling network of bot accounts. And a representative for Drake did not immediately respond to a request for comment. So basically they're saying a substantial percentage of all the streams that Drake has had on Spotify were actually fake and botted. You guys saw the 2018 example I showed you where Drake's face was plastered on every single Spotify playlist. You saw the example with his new song, Doghouse, in 2025, where the streaming activity seemed highly suspicious. Now he's in this lawsuit where they claim a large chunk of his 37 billion streams were botted. So much so to the point where this botting was so substantial, Spotify had to have known about it. Now here's where it gets interesting. You might be wondering, Drake's catalog, it's so big, his old music has such timeless classic hits, right? There's no way these could be botted, right? And ever since he signed a new deal with UMG back in 2022, his music hasn't been streaming or performing as well on the charts in the way that his old music was. But somehow ever since then, his old catalog continues to actually outstream his new music. Well, this is what's interesting. According to this lawsuit, the alleged fraudulent botting activity that took place for Drake was between January 2022 and September of 2025, which again is when Drake re-signed his contract with UMG. It claims an examination of Drake's streams revealed abnormal VPN usage that had obscured the location of the bot accounts streaming Drake's songs. For instance, the lawsuit claims that over a 4-day period in 2024, at least 250,000 streams of his song No Case had originated in Turkey, but they were falsely geomapped through the coordinated use of VPNs to the United Kingdom in an attempt to obscure their origins. AKA, there might have been a big stream or botting farm in Turkey that was just, constantly boosting fake streams onto Spotify, but they were using a VPN on those devices that were doing the fake streams, and the VPNs had placed the device's location as in the UK. But what's very interesting is that, of course, they name the fake streams to have derived from Turkey, right? Well, back in this summer, the Turkey government had actually started looking into Spotify to see if it's acting unfairly in the country's music market. The officials were investigating two main things. Number one, playlist favoritism, whether Spotify gives unfair advantages to certain artists or record labels in how songs show up on playlists and recommendations or in rankings. And number two was unfair pricing, whether or not Spotify subscription prices are so low that other music platforms can't compete or smaller music companies can't earn enough money. Basically, the government wants to know if Spotify is using its power to squeeze out competitors or treat some artists better than others. And again, we saw the playlist favoritism that they showed Drake back in 2018 with his Scorpion album. Now this new lawsuit is claiming that they have evidence to say 250,000 streams in 4 days of Drake's song No Face were actually from Turkey, but they were using a VPN to say that the streams came from the UK and that these streams were actually botted in Turkey. Pretty crazy stuff here. The lawsuit also alleges that a large percentage of accounts streaming Drake's music were geographically concentrated around areas whose population could not support such a high volume of streams. No exact places or numbers were given, though the suit claims that some streams reportedly originated in areas with 0 residential addresses. So basically, a lot of Spotify accounts streaming Drake's music came from locations that didn't even have any residents in them. Meaning, like, how could there be people with devices in these locations when no one actually even lives in these locations? The lawsuit also cites significant and irregular uptick months for Drake's songs long after they've been released, as well as slower and less dramatic decay rates for Drake's music compared to his contemporaries. Decay rates refer to typical streaming patterns where plays of an album or song naturally dwindle in the weeks and months after they release. Basically, the first day Drake drops a song, it's going to get tons of streams because a lot of new eyeballs are on it, but as the days progress, there's less and less people that continue to listen to that song. That's very natural. I showed you guys with that example with his song Doghouse how the streams seemed up and down at very volatile rates. It was very irregular how the actual decay rates were moving. And now this lawsuit is saying the exact same thing, also saying there were significant and irregular uptick months for Drake songs after they've been released. And that's interesting because we have noticed a lot of old Drake music suddenly randomly receive massive amounts of streams in 2025, songs that were released way back in like 2011, right? And to any OVHO watching who thinks I'm like biased or unfair because I was criticizing Drake's lawsuit but I'm not criticizing this, I always said I was curious to see the bodying allegations, how those would play out in Drake's lawsuit. The reason why I was critical on Drake's lawsuit is because he was suing over a rap battle, and if he won, it would set a new precedent for how we judge freedom of speech within song lyrics. That was always the problem. That's not the case with this lawsuit. They're criticizing how Spotify actually allows top dogs like Drake to manipulate the charts. The lawsuit further claims that the number of streams of Drake's music attributable to individual accounts is staggering and irregular, with a massive amount of accounts listening to Drake's music doing so 23 hours a day. Less than 2% of these users, the lawsuit goes on to claim, account for roughly 15% of Drake's streams, and about 9% of Drake's streams are attributable to less than 1% of these users. What are they trying to say here? Basically, a huge number of Drake's streams come from strange non-stop activity, no pun intended, since he has a song called Non-Stop. Ha 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 ha. Some accounts play his music for almost 23 hours a day. That sounds like bodying activity, right? A device that's just constantly playing your music over and over again to boost the numbers. It also claims that less than 2% of his listeners make up about 15% of his total streams, and under 1% of users generated 9% of all his plays, meaning that a very small chunk of the users who are actually playing Drake songs on Spotify account for a large percentage of his total streams. Either he has some absolutely insane fans who are streaming his music 23 hours a day, where 2% of those fans make up 15% of the total 37 billion streams that Drake has, or some bodying activity was going on. I wouldn't put it past the OVHOs to really be streaming his music that much, but these numbers are absolutely insane, if true. So the lawsuit continues. As a result, Drake's music accumulated far higher total streams compared to other highly streamed artists, even though those artists had more users than Drake, meaning other artists, probably like Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, maybe even Kendrick Lamar, had more actual Spotify users listening to their music, but somehow Drake had way more streams than these people, meaning that Drake had less people listening, but they were listening for a lot longer, or maybe there was just bots that were, spamming his music over and over again to boost up the numbers. That's essentially what the lawsuit is trying to imply. It is important to note, though, that the lawsuit does not state how the plaintiffs or their lawyers obtained this data, nor does it shed any light on how the analysis of Drake's streaming numbers were conducted. Basically, the guy who filed this lawsuit, he's actually Snoop Dogg's cousin. He did some work on Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic. He's filing this on behalf of all artists that have their music on Spotify, saying that there is some unfair activity going on and Spotify is turning a blind eye to it. But he's not showing how him or his lawyers actually conducted this research or got this information and these numbers off of Drake's streaming activity. These alleged fraudulent streams generated significant revenues for Drake and his company Frozen Moments, but it was at the expense of other artists, the lawsuit claims. But it also states that Spotify deliberately turns a blind eye to fraudulent streaming for its own benefit. While Spotify had taken steps in recent years to combat and tamp down streaming fraud, the lawsuit casts doubt on the efficacy of those measures and Spotify's own incentives to stop fraud. It suggests that Spotify is particularly vulnerable to bots on the platform's ad-supported free tier because myriad accounts can be generated without handing over a credit card number. By allegedly allowing bots to run rampant, Spotify can present high stream and user activity numbers to potential advertisers, the lawsuit alleges. Basically, anyone can create a free Spotify account without using a credit card, so it's very easy for these bot farms to have a million devices create fake Spotify accounts and just continuously stream songs, right? And Spotify turns a blind eye because then they could go to their advertisers and say, hey, look at how many users we have. You can run ads on our platform, and we have all these different people, these different accounts that you can run ads to. But a lot of these accounts are fake. The lawsuit continues. For Spotify, more users and music streams means more advertising dollars, so long as the true origin of the streams remains hidden. Artists across the streaming industry need accurate reporting of streams and effective fraud detection to ensure fair compensation. When streams are artificially inflated on a large scale, like this artist claims Drake music has, it affects the income of countless songwriters, performers, and producers. The lawsuit seeks to address these broader issues, recoup losses for affected musicians, and make the streaming ecosystem as fair and transparent as possible for everyone involved. The new lawsuit and the claims regarding Drake's music notably come just weeks after a judge tossed Drake's lawsuit against UMG, which contained its own allegations of streaming fraud. Though technically a defamation case, Drake accused his own record label UMG of course, artificially inflating the popularity of Kendrick's diss track, Not Like Us, marking arguably the most high-profile allegation of streaming fraud to date. UMG denied all of Drake's allegations and the streaming fraud claims specifically, writing in a March legal filing, there is no evidence of such stream manipulation. Streaming fraud has been a topic of discussion in the industry for years. While pinpointing just how rampant it is and calculating corresponding lawsuits, it's very difficult. Most estimates hover in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions. Basically, when trying to calculate how many millions of dollars artists have lost because of other artists using bots, it's in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. A 2019 Rolling Stone report noted that fake streams could be costing artists $300 million a year. A 2023 study in France found that between 1 and 3% of all streams in the country were fake. If those numbers are held true globally, that would mean royalty losses of up to $510 million. Last year, Beat the App, a streaming fraud detection program, estimated that at least 10% of all streams are fraudulent, leading to annual losses of $2 to $3 billion. So obviously this is a big problem on Spotify and it's costing artists tons of money because, like I gave you guys in that example before, when the pie gets diluted and Spotify thinks that these artists who are using bots are actually, streaming a large percentage of the pie of total streaming numbers on the platform, those artists get paid a higher amount. Meanwhile, the other artists who are not using bots, their percentage of the total pie shrinks and they get paid less. Efforts to crack down on streaming fraud have ramped up around the world. A Danish man was convicted last year, while another individual arrested in Brazil back in March. Over the summers, officials in Turkey, where the lawsuit says some of the alleged fraudulent Drake streams originated, they started investigating Spotify over several allegations, including bribes for playlist placement and bot streams distorting domestic charts. And in the US, federal prosecutors brought an unprecedented streaming fraud indictment last September against a North Carolina musician named Michael Smith. Smith is accused of using artificial intelligence to generate hundreds of thousands of songs, which he then allegedly streamed with bots. The feds claim that at one point, Smith had as many as 10,000 active bot accounts streaming his music, and allegedly made over $10 million from this scheme. Basically, this guy was making AI songs, so he was able to put out like thousands of songs. Then he was using bots to actually stream the songs. And then Spotify, of course, pays him out for those fake streams because they don't know they're fake. Drake filed his first legal claims over Not Like Us just 2 months after Michael Smith was arrested and indicted on these bot charges, and the official defamation suit was brought in January of this year. The streaming fraud allegations against UMG were based on statements from a purported anonymous whistleblower who appeared on a show by DJ Akademiks, the popular streamer and longtime Drake associate. As stated in Drake's lawsuit, the whistleblower claimed that Kendrick's label Interscope paid him $2,500 via third parties to use bots to achieve 30 million streams on Spotify in the initial days following the release of Not Like Us. Per Drake's lawsuit, the whistleblower said the goal was jumpstarting the song's spread and making it a crazy hit right off the bat on the platform. UMG, in a motion to dismiss, noted that the whistleblower directly refuted his own claim when he said that he was hired by Kendrick's manager, Anthony Saleh. In a revised complaint in April, Drake pared down his allegation, claiming UMG was aware that third parties were using bots to stream the recording and turned a blind eye, despite having the power to stop such behavior. So basically, again, in Drake's first lawsuit, he had that source of the Akademiks live stream where that whistleblower went on and said he was paid $2,500 to put 30 million fake streams on Not Like Us. But then when he refiled the lawsuit in April, he actually removed that source and corrected it to say that UMG was just aware that third parties were using bots on Not Like Us, with no actual evidence to support it. The original lawsuit also alleges that UMG conferred financial benefits to Apple so that Siri would purposely misdirect users to Not Like Us when they asked it to play Drake's album Certified Lover Boy. This claim was sourced partly to a viral video posted by Hip Hop DX's Jeremy Hecht, who later clarified that Siri appeared capable of pulling songs based on just lyrics it recognized. Thus, asking Siri to play Certified Lover Boy without specifying Drake could conceivably trigger Not Like Us because of Kendrick's line in the song, Certified Lover Boy, Certified PDFs. Basically, Siri has this thing where if you say Siri play, Certified Lover Boy or any song lyric, it's going to think, if you don't actually specify play Certified Lover Boy by Drake, that you're talking about Not Like Us because that's a popular song that contains the lyric Certified Lover Boy. You can do the same thing with, let's say, Kanye West Can't Tell Me Nothing. If you say, hey Siri, play Na Na Na, wait till I get my money right, it's going to start playing that song, even though that's not the name of the song. So that's not suspicious botting activity. That's just a natural bug in Siri. Kendrick doesn't have nothing to do with that. Even before Drake filed his defamation lawsuit, many legal experts and industry figures were skeptical of his allegations and their viability in court. Speaking with Rolling Stone last year about the petition, Brian Suzuki, co-founder of the streaming service Audiomack, even suggested Drake might regret asking UMG to provide documentation of artificial streaming. It's likely that a lot of artists, Drake included, have benefited from streaming bots without their knowledge, said Brian Suzuki. He also noted that many top artists have labels and distribution partners who have opted into above-board programs like Discovery Mode and have artificially manipulated streams, and the artist has no idea, and they don't ask questions because it looks good. What Discovery Mode is basically you can take less of a percent of all the money that your song makes from Spotify in exchange for Spotify promoting your song more heavily on their playlists. This is a legal tactic that many labels will do for artists, and the artists aren't even aware of it. What Brian Suzuki was trying to say is that by Drake trying to unravel this whole rabbit hole of bots because he's accusing Kendrick Lamar and UMG of using them, he might discover the dark truth that his team has also used them on Drake's own music. Ultimately, Drake's lawsuit faltered. A judge dismissed the lawsuit's defamation accusations, ruling that Not Like Us as a diss track qualified as non-actionable opinion. And while the judge's decision largely centered on the validity of Drake's defamation claims, or lack thereof, she also briefly addressed his streaming fraud allegations. She said Drake's evidence essentially amounts to tweets by individual users and reporting from fans, and called his reliance on online comments and reporting insufficient to meet the plausibility standard. Basically, Drake didn't have any sources in his lawsuit. He was relying on gossip from Twitter, literally citing Twitter accounts like Poetic Flocko in his lawsuit to show, hey, look, guys, people online are discussing how Kendrick might be using bots, so this is good enough to put in the lawsuit. The proposed class action filed Sunday claims damages in excess of $5 million. It's asking that a federal judge certify the lawsuit as a class action, order Spotify to identify alleged victims, and oversee a jury trial seeking compensatory and punitive damages. RBX, born Eric Dwayne Collins, helped author Dr. Dre's West Coast anthem Let Me Ride and was featured on several tracks for Dr. Dre's seminal album The Chronic. So basically, RBX, he's filing this lawsuit, he's spearheading this movement into the exposure of bots on Spotify, and he wants $5 million if he wins the case, and a whole trial where Spotify actually has to identify other artists who were victim to other artists using bots and therefore got paid less. And what's absolutely insane is that Drake is the face of this, right? He's not being sued. RBX is not going after Drake for using bots. They're going after Spotify and saying that we studied Drake's catalog and his streaming activity, and after running the numbers, we realized there's a lot of suspicious stuff going on with Drake's charting history, with his streams on Spotify. And his fake streams and botting activity is going to be the evidence we use to get this case full force in court, where we target Spotify and the blind eye they took to Drake's charting manipulation and the manipulation of other major players on Spotify with fake streams. You know what they say, be careful what you wish for, right? Drake wanted the industry to be a safer space for artists, or at least that's what he said when covering up the selfish intentions he had when filing that lawsuit against UMG, compromising freedom of speech for all artists in the future. Well, now he's getting what he supposedly wanted. After being the top guy on Spotify streaming platforms for years on end, he's now the face of a class action lawsuit targeting Spotify for allowing their biggest artists on the platform to get away with using fake streams and bots and running off with the profits. And of course, Bot Liana is the main culprit. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics.
for a living.